Yes.
Remake.
Yes.
Reinvent it. None of us need is out of war, but we can reinvent, right? Is that right? We all agree with that, so there's no disagreement. All right. Would you give the president or the presiding officer the authority to write executive orders?
No.
I wouldn't either. Why?
That would make him an authoritarian.
He would be doing something without the consent of the governed. Why would we want a presiding officer who's no better than any of the rest of us, and maybe worse?
Right.
All right, why do we want him giving us orders?
We don't.
Isn't that too much like a monarchy?
Right, thank you.
Well, it's putting way too much responsibility on a fallible being.
You're right.
That's what our hair turns gray for the week.
So, are you getting the idea that you need to write your own bill of particulars? And that you need to come into one accord or agreement, complete agreement? But at the same time, let every one of us be an individual with our own rights, to pursue our own type of happiness, whatever that is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
How much more of this dictatorial monarchy can we stand? Go ahead.
So, our bill of particulars that you're talking about, is it outside of our current bill of particulars, well, the current constitution, which perhaps if it was being followed correctly would be.
This is the old bill of particulars.
Right. So are we giving a bill of particulars that would end, there would be a new declaration of independence, a new government, a new constitution, or are we working within the framework of existing constitution?
Well, for one thing, we're going to have a majority of our fellow countrymen come along with us, aren't we?
Yeah.
All right, why? Because we live in a police state. Okay? Most every soldier has a mother. Most every soldier has a brother. Most every soldier has a sister. Very few of them are inclined to hurt their own family. Isn't that right? So how are you going to do this? Do we start an insurrection when we're less than 1% of the population and we don't yet know for sure what we're doing? Would you say stage one is education?
Yes.
Would you say stage two is coalescence?
Yes.
You might have to show me how I need to.
Coming together
No, I have.
in one accord.
Go ahead.
Just have to plug that
Just
in.
make sure you name the file, and then I'll go ahead and give it to Shane.
And call it solidarity, call it coming to one accord. You're going to offend some people using the word solidarity. I want to tell you that. Who are you going to offend doing that?
People
Ones
who,
that like to be a good
people who don't
The
stand.
police state.
People who have preconceived notions of what that will.
The police state. Okay? The king's men. How many have heard the term the king's men?
All the king's horses.
But what can they say? We can use that word if we want to. If we decide we want to, we can use that word. But we can say, look, here's what it means. It doesn't mean that I'm going to hide a gun in my back pocket and pull it out and shoot you, officer.
I'm gonna give you a hug instead.
What is, if you have a run up against a challenging male police officer, what is the most disarming question you think you could possibly ask him?
Am I free to leave, officer?
No, that irritates me.
I would say, would you like it to?
I said, that'll make it worse. There's two people who are going to jail.
I didn't do it.
So what did I do wrong, officer?
Let me see your badge.
I'll tell you.
have, I'm gonna give you.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna give you,
I apologize.
now this is field tested, this is field tested. I asked the question because I already had the answer. Do you have do you have a mother, officer?
What it says no.
I arrested her yesterday.
I used to. I
Did
feel-
you have a mother, officer?
They were dead.
And then just shut up. One of the, if you are going to go up against the police state, you're going to have to learn words and language. And you're going to have to learn something, and I'll get right to you, it's this. Something called a pregnant pause. Are there any business leaders in here that know what that is? You tell me what pregnant pause means.
Pregnant pause is basically a term that allows attention getting. I break up my language to get your attention. The longer I pause, the more you want to pay attention. It's presentational. They use it in a lot of seminars, and it gets your attention because you lean in if you want to listen. When you stop, it's not sounding like you're thinking. You're stopping to get their attention, getting their eyes on you to pay attention so they can remember what you are saying.
And what were you saying? Then I'll come back to that. What were you gonna ask?
I think you're making the point that, if we're dealing with everyday American cops, then we can use that strategy. But what happens if they try to pull in NATO or some foreign troops that don't really give a about us?
Well, that is a down the road policy if we let it get that far down the road before we start taking action.
Well, I think that's what they're.
That's what their long-term goal is. But they're depending on us not to interrupt them.
What's the long-term goal of that?
The long-term goal is one world government, absolute rule. Take a look at North Korea, and if you like that, don't object to anything they're doing. There are people going to prison work camps in North Korea for 6 months because they didn't breathe long enough and loud enough when their leader died. That's extreme collectivism. There's two different ways of bringing people together. One is by willing assent, and the other is by coercion. Which do we want? That means we've got to learn. And there are plenty of disarming statements that if you guys want to pursue it, we want to have classes on how to do it. There are hundreds of them that we can use, and we can break up into different groups of people who are responsible. Let's say that bureaucratic agency number 1 comes to you as a group and wants to talk to you. Are all of you expected to know how to handle bureaucratic agency number 1? You should have a department or a people group that handles that. And they learn the disarming questions.
They may already know them. I mean, they may understand all
You wish they did. If they knew them, they wouldn't keep that job. They'd do another one. How many people have heard of the term PSQ? Have actually know what that is? PSQ. It stands for Public Servant Questionnaire.
Oh, that one. Yeah, it's similar to legalese.
It is a document that you serve on a bureaucrat. Public Servant Questionnaire. And they're so used to creating paperwork and putting out paperwork that most of them will be intimidated enough to fill it out. What other, I've handed it to hundreds of bureaucrats and had them fill it out, and I had a few smart enough not to.
What is it?
A public servant, how many people have access to the internet?
Have what?
Access to the internet. Put the search term in there, you can Google it, Yahoo it, Bing it, whatever you want. Public servant questionnaire. Download that and digest it. If you want, you can have a class on how to use it and how to enforce it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that, yeah, definitely a teaching for that PSQ. So
Okay.
it's a very powerful tool.
Very, very powerful tool. I'm talking about some specific tools. Now, what is the number one problem that we have with the United States Constitution?
Yeah,
enforcement.
say it's not-
Somebody said the word enforce?
She doesn't have any
Enforcement,
Okay, enforcement. Who's responsible to enforce it?
the executive branch.
Police,
And
the
the
people.
legislative and the judicial.
we the people, it is our duty.
What happens when he's got the most correct answer. What happens when the Congress doesn't do it and the president doesn't do
They're
it?
not representative of the people.
So then what do we do?
Call the police.
We're supposed to vote them out, but that's another way of doing it.
Well, what do we have a choice of? When it comes time to replace the president, what do we have a choice of? Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah,
Right.
no kidding.
Public one,
The
public two.
Constitution, I believe, states that we the people, it is our duty as the people to bring down and, I can't remember the exact term, but basically stop a tyrannical government.
Yes.
Abolish
And
There's nothing.
There's nothing in the Constitution.
That's-
that says-
How many people would like to learn a way to bring our government into heel without firing a shot? And would you be willing to do it without guns?
I would prefer to do it without guns.
It's gonna have to be done without guns, because guns are for burglars and intruders and rapists, and that's what they're for.
Well, they have much more and much bigger guns than we do.
That's right.
a major problem.
You aren't gonna be without guns. But they are so weak right now. They have so many vulnerabilities that we can take them down.